At 5:12 local time, USS Tripoli was already inside the strait. The sea was calm, and the early morning light stretched across the water in hard, silver bands. On the bridge, the watch team moved through routine procedures. Inside the Combat Information Center, radar screens cycled steadily, tracking merchant ships, shoreline clutter, and the tight, compressed picture of a narrow waterway that never gave large naval ships much room to think. Then 3 tracks appeared. Fast, high-performance aircraft approaching from the northeast. At first, they were only bright symbols on a screen, small against the layered noise of the Gulf. Then the numbers started shifting. Speed, bearing, closure rate, all tightening in one direction toward Tripoli. 3 fast movers bearing 048 closing. The report was delivered flat and precise. No wasted words, no raised voice. On a naval vessel, tone mattered. Calm meant the system was working. The tactical action officer leaned over the display as the tracks drew closer. The range was still significant, but not comfortable. The lead aircraft stayed centered. The other 2 spread outward, one drifting south, the other north. They were not breaking away, not wandering, but shaping their approach with purpose. IFF returned nothing useful. No friendly confirmation, no routine transit profile, no immediate response to query. Another operator checked the air picture against known schedules and regional traffic. Nothing matched. The 3 contacts kept coming, descending in stages. With each drop in altitude, they became harder to track cleanly against the cluttered horizon. On the bridge, Tripoli held course. That was the first test in waters like these. Not panic, not showmanship. Recognition, confirmation, posture. The ship did not turn. It did not surge forward. It did not flood every compartment with alarm. It stayed disciplined while the system around it came alive. Inside CIC, the tempo changed without becoming chaotic. Console shifted to threat monitoring, voice circuits multiplied, bearings were repeated, closure calculations updated every few seconds, and every time the numbers refreshed, the same conclusion became clearer. The aircraft were coming in too directly, too quickly, and with too much coordination to dismiss. Range dropped, then dropped again. A warning was transmitted on guard frequency, standard language, clear, professional, no response. The lead track descended again. That was the moment the geometry changed. At altitude, intent could still be disguised. Low over the water, inside a confined passage, fast jets no longer looked like observers. They looked like a serious problem, with very little time attached to it. A second warning went out. Still nothing. At the air search console, the operator adjusted the gain and filtered the clutter. For a moment, the return sharpened cleanly. 3 aircraft, tight timing, controlled separation, not random, not uncertain. Whoever was flying them knew exactly how to compress the ship's reaction window. On the bridge wing, lookouts scanned into the brightening east. Nothing was visible yet to the naked eye. Only sky, light haze, and an empty horizon. But inside the ship, every screen told a different story. Tripoli was not alone, and it was not blind. Data moved continuously between sensors, watch teams, and command stations. With the cold efficiency expected of a Navy ship in contested waters, the defensive posture rose one level, then another. Not enough to provoke, enough to be ready. In the aviation spaces, alert procedures began. No shouting, no rush, equipment was checked, personnel moved into position, headsets went on, safety lines were cleared, everyone on board understood the same thing without needing it said aloud. In a narrow strait with fast aircraft inbound, minutes were not generous. They were a luxury. At 52 miles, the 3 contacts separated further. One remained centered, nose pointed straight toward the American ship. The second widened to starboard. The third climbed slightly, then curved outward, building an overhead angle while keeping the formation loose enough to complicate a single response. That was not a normal transit pattern. That was pressure. Another radio hail went out. Another warning. Another chance for the approaching aircraft to identify themselves, alter course, and turn a dangerous encounter into a manageable one. No reply came back. Instead, one of the tracks accelerated. Inside CIC, eyes remained locked on the same 3 symbols as they cut the distance mile by mile. The lead aircraft was now low enough that sea return began interfering with clean tracking. That by itself sent a message. Whoever sat in that cockpit understood exactly how to use the strait's compressed airspace and surface clutter to reduce warning time. Then the first visual report came from topside. Aircraft in sight. Seconds later, all 3 broke out of the morning glare. Dark shapes, sharp wings, fast closure. One jet drove straight down the ship's forward axis. The second held wide. The third stayed higher and offset, watching the whole encounter unfold beneath it. No one in CIC needed to explain what the picture now suggested. 3 Iranian fighter jets had found the ship, and the lead aircraft was still descending, still closing, still not turning away. At 5:14 local time, there was no uncertainty left. The aircraft were no longer distant radar returns blurred against shoreline clutter. They were real, fast, and closing inside a stretch of water too narrow for mistakes. From the bridge, the lead jet could now be followed through binoculars. From CIC, every turn, every descent, every shift in spacing fed a tighter tactical picture. The geometry had become unmistakable. One fighter held the center line, one widened to starboard. The third remained higher and farther out, sliding into a position that offered a broader view of the ship, the water around it, and any response Tripoli might make. They were not arriving as a single group. They were building angles. Range 2 to 4 miles. The call moved across the circuit without emotion. That was how Navy Watch teams kept control when the reaction window began to collapse. Nobody needed dramatic language. The numbers were dramatic enough. On the bridge, Tripoli held course. Its wake stayed straight. Its bow remained steady. The ship did not swing away, and it did not overcorrect into a movement that would advertise uncertainty. That restraint mattered. In confined water, under direct aerial pressure, every heading change sent a signal. A ship that moved too early looked unsure. A ship that moved too late invited something worse. Inside CIC, the air picture sharpened again. Electro-optical sensors locked in with better clarity now. Heat signatures, wing profile, tail arrangement, the classification firmed. Iranian fighters. Armed status, not confirmed. Intent, not declared. Behavior, increasingly difficult to dismiss as routine. Another warning transmission went out on guard frequency. No response. The lead jet dropped even lower. That change registered immediately across every screen. Altitude bled away. Speed remained high. Nose angle stayed disciplined. It was not diving recklessly. It was controlling the closure, stripping precious seconds from the ship's decision cycle while keeping its exact purpose balanced just inside the line between intimidation and open action. The starboard aircraft widened farther. The high aircraft adjusted in a shallow arc, not leaving the encounter, but repositioning around it. Together, they were creating pressure from 3 points at once. One dead ahead, one on the beam, one above and outside. For a ship transiting Hormuz, that was enough to turn a contact into a full tactical problem. Possible multi-axis pressure profile. The assessment came from CIC in clipped language, neither exaggerated nor softened. It required no interpretation. The formation was no longer simply approaching Tripoli. It was arranging itself around the ship's response envelope. On the weather decks, sailors kept their eyes on the sky. The morning had brightened now. Sunlight cut hard across the water, throwing glare off the chop and bleaching the horizon. Against that brightness, the fighters appeared and vanished in sharp flashes, dark shapes moving faster than the eye wanted to trust. Each glint across canopy and wing made them seem closer than they had a second earlier. The lead aircraft came lower still, too low for comfort, too low for any honest misunderstanding. A safe overflight could have been made higher, wider, and more clearly separated from the ship's path. This was not that. This was a line being approached deliberately, step by step, with just enough restraint to avoid revealing final intent. In the ship's aviation spaces, readiness deepened. Flight deck personnel moved under control, not sprinting, not bunching, not wasting motion. Equipment was checked again. Communications stayed tight. The ship's own airborne options were being prepared. Not because Tripoli had chosen to escalate, but because in encounters like this, readiness had to exist before permission to use it ever arrived. At one point, 8 miles, the starboard fighter suddenly accelerated. Its movement differed from the lead aircraft's disciplined inbound profile. This one cut laterally, fast and low, crossing wider off Tripoli's side as if testing how the ship tracked separated threats. The higher jet held altitude just long enough to keep the formation uneven. It was a subtle shift, but inside CIC, the effect was immediate. More angles, more timing questions, more ways for a tense pass to become something else. Then came the first low run. Not directly over the ship, not yet. The lead fighter leveled its approach and drove in along the forward sector at an altitude low enough to force every sensor operator to treat the move with complete seriousness. Faint spray lifted beneath it where wake turbulence brushed the sea. Its speed never really came off. Its nose stayed perfectly aligned. No brake left, no brake right. On the bridge, the watch tracked it visually. In CIC, it was numbers, vectors, and timing. 2 perspectives, 1 conclusion. The aircraft was holding its line longer than a simple show would require. Another warning went out. Still nothing. No call sign, no acknowledgement, no shift in behavior. Range 1 to 4 miles. Off the starboard side, the second fighter tightened its position. Above, the third aircraft began a wider arc, almost relaxed at first glance, but carefully timed. If the lead jet forced attention forward, the others were stretching that attention outward and upward. That was the real pressure building over Tripoli. Not a single threat, a layered one. Then someone in CIC said it quietly. Possible attack geometry. No repetition, no emphasis, It didn't need any. On the bridge, the captain absorbed the update without changing posture. The ship held steady, not rigid, not passive, but exactly controlled. Ready for the next 10 seconds, even if those 10 seconds turned critical. Ahead, the lead Iranian fighter wasn't making a wide pass anymore. It was driving straight in. And this time, it didn't feel like a warning. 5:18 local time. That was the shift. Tripoli stopped treating the situation as a dangerous approach and began treating it as a fully controlled tactical event. Inside CIC, everything tightened with near-mechanical precision. What had been tracking became structured. Contacts became assigned elements inside a layered picture of time, bearing, speed, and response. Every movement from the three jets was now captured, compared, and interpreted in real time. The lead fighter remained the focal point, still low, still forward, still closing along a profile that no longer resembled routine transit. But the other two mattered just as much. One held position to starboard, forcing attention across the beam. The third stayed higher and offset, maintaining a wide-angle view of the entire encounter. Together, they were doing exactly what fast aircraft are designed to do in confined waters. Compress attention, divide reaction, and force a mistake. Tripoli didn't give them one. Track all three, maintain full continuity. The order was immediate and absolute. No target ignored, no contact slipping into the background while the lead jet pulled focus. CIC held the entire pattern at once. That's where a warship like this becomes truly effective, not through noise or dramatic moves, but through discipline. Across the ship, systems came fully alive. Air search continued feeding the broader picture. Electro-optical sensors locked onto the most aggressive aircraft, extracting every detail: heat signature, angle, silhouette, movement. Electronic warfare teams began collecting fragments of behavior. Short emissions, timing patterns, sensor use. Even without any escalation, the aircraft were already revealing something valuable: their habits, their spacing, their confidence, their doctrine. On the bridge, Tripoli still held course. That decision now carried even more weight. The ship had every reason to show urgency. It didn't. Its wake stayed clean, its bow steady. From the cockpits above, the message was clear. The ship below was not uncertain, not reactive, not broadcasting confusion. And that mattered, because pressure only works when the other side shows it. In the aviation spaces, readiness tightened another level. Positions were locked in, communications checked, safety boundaries confirmed. Nothing rushed, nothing wasted. It wasn't about immediate action. It was about being ready before action was even needed. Lead aircraft steady inbound, starboard tightening, high aircraft maintaining offset. The update came through clean and clipped. On the displays, the pattern was obvious now. One shaping the front, one pressing the side, one observing from above. Coordinated enough to matter. Restrained enough to stay just below a clear line. That's where these encounters live. Nothing fired, nothing dropped, and still, the pressure is real. The lead aircraft made another low run, closer this time. Its path across the forward sector forced instant recalculations, closure time, turn radius, possible next move. At that speed and altitude, there's no comfortable pause between intent and outcome. But something had changed. The aircraft wasn't the only one measuring anymore. Every second it stayed close, Tripoli learned more. How it handled altitude, how long it stayed inside certain arcs. Whether it relied on speed, proximity, or timing. Whether the other jets reacted independently and all followed its lead. This wasn't just pressure anymore, it was pattern recognition. Off to starboard, the second fighter dropped lower, not matching the lead, not yet, but enough to reinforce the message. It wasn't there for safety. It was there to stretch the ship sideways, forcing attention across multiple planes at once. Above, the third aircraft shifted again. Subtle, controlled, maintaining oversight of the entire scene. Still, Tripoli didn't react sharply. No sudden maneuvers, no rushed escalation, just visible readiness. On deck and inside the island, that readiness showed itself quietly. Crew at stations, sensors locked, timing compressed, procedures already complete before the next command could even be spoken. This is what control looks like. Not loud, not dramatic, just complete. Then something shifted. At first, barely noticeable. The lead jet stayed aggressive, but the formation behind it lost some of its earlier smoothness. The starboard aircraft adjusted slightly late. The high aircraft widened more than before. Nothing dramatic, just enough to suggest something had changed. The pilots above had started to understand what the ship below was showing them. They were being tracked, fully, continuously, measured in real time, and whatever advantage they hoped to create through speed and pressure was starting to thin out. One more low pass came off the bow, one more deliberate show, but it didn't land the same way, because now the balance had begun to shift. The fighters were still shaping angles, but now they knew. Every move was being read. 5:21 local time. By then, the moment narrowed to a single aircraft. All three were still part of the situation, but only one carried the weight of it. The lead jet. It had been first to descend, first to commit to the forward axis, first to stay just a little too long inside every critical boundary. And now it came in again. Low, fast, direct. On Tripoli's displays, there was no ambiguity left. This wasn't a wide area presence. This was a profile that forced every second to matter. The starboard fighter stayed lower, holding pressure on the side. The third remained high and offset, watching from above. But everything now centered on the front. What the lead pilot did next would define the moment. Inside CIC, no one needed to say it out loud. The margin was gone. Updates came faster. Windows got tighter. Every interpretation now ran against one simple reality. In confined water, against a low, fast aircraft, the distance between pressure and irreversible outcome is almost nothing. Lead aircraft continuing inbound. The voice stayed level. On the bridge, the captain held the same calm as before. Course steady. No sharp turns, no visible hesitation. That mattered now more than ever. Too early, and you risk escalation. Too late, and you give the moment away. So the ship stayed exact. The lead fighter dropped lower again. Not touching the surface plateau, but close enough to turn proximity into pressure. And this time, one detail stood out clearly. It held the line longer than before. A routine pass would break earlier. A controlled show would widen just enough. This aircraft did neither. It stayed. It held. It kept coming. Possible hostile intent if profile continues. The words didn't need volume. They defined the boundary. Continue like this. And the interpretation changes. Off to starboard, the second fighter edged closer. Not aggressively, but deliberately. Now there was pressure from the front and from the side, while the third aircraft maintained oversight from above. A classic three-point setup, front, flank, overwatch, designed to stretch attention and compress decisions. But Tripoli didn't fracture. Tracking stayed clean. Sensor locks held steady. Electronic surveillance kept collecting fragments, signal by signal. If the pilots believed speed and aggression gave them control, they were already learning something else. The closer they came, the more they revealed. And then the lead fighter made one more move. It came in along the forward sector at a distance and altitude no professional warship could ignore. From the bridge, the aircraft was no longer just a dark outline against the sun. Now it had shape, wings, control surfaces, movement you could read. Intent was no longer abstract. Inside CIC, the numbers told the same story in a different language. Time was compressing. Seconds, not many. Maintain readiness. The order moved through the ship with the same cold precision as everything before it. No panic, no drama, just a clear understanding. The next change in that aircraft's path could decide how this morning ended. Above the strait, the lead jet kept pressing. At this range, confidence and miscalculation were separated by almost nothing. Its nose stayed locked, altitude stayed low. It felt like the pilot was testing something, pushing to see if Tripoli would give up control of the moment, if a warship, pinned in narrow water, would hesitate. Then something changed. Not a flash, not a strike, a realization. It showed first in the timing. The aircraft held its line just a fraction too long, then corrected. A small adjustment, then a sharper one. The kind of movement pilots make when they suddenly understand they've pushed deeper than planned, and space is running out. Behind it, the starboard jet shifted too. Not as clean, not as confident. Above them, the third fighter widened its arc. For the first time that morning, the formation looked reactive, not in control. The lead jet had gone too far into the ship's forward picture to keep the illusion. Stay 1 second longer, and the moment risks crossing a line neither side can easily recover from. Brake now, and the pressure loses its edge. The pilot chose to brake. Hard. The fighter snapped away from the bow in a sharp, aggressive turn, climbing just enough to clear its own margin, leaving behind a moment that hung in the air like something unfinished. The starboard aircraft peeled off almost immediately. The third followed, widening out above them. No missile, no gunfire. But no one aboard Tripoli would confuse what just happened with a routine pass. Nothing had been launched. And yet, it had come close enough for everyone to see exactly where the line was, and how near it had been approached. 5:24 local time. The shift came quickly. One moment, the lead jet was pulling away from the most critical geometry of the morning. The next, the entire formation was moving with it. The starboard aircraft widened first, releasing the pressure it had built along the ship's side. The high aircraft rolled into a broader arc, drifting away from the encounter. Just like that, the shape over the strait began to change. Not instantly, not perfectly, but enough. Inside CIC, nothing was taken for granted. All 3 tracks remained active. All 3 were still measured: altitude, heading, rate of turn, separation. The ship didn't relax just because the aircraft turned away. It watched the departure the same way it had watched the approach. Carefully, continuously. Because in waters like Hormuz, a retreat can reverse just as quickly. Lead aircraft opening range. The voice reporting it stayed calm. Almost ordinary. That was intentional. Professional crews don't celebrate when tension eases. They confirm it, log it, and stay ready. On the bridge, Tripoli remained exactly what it had been the entire time. Steady, its bow pointed down the transit lane, its wake clean and straight through the narrow water. No chase, no dramatic move forward, no attempt to turn a defensive success into a visible show. It simply held the sea, and that was enough. Across the ship, systems stayed fully active as distance increased. Radar continued tracking the fighters as they moved away. Electro-optical sensors held them until light and distance flattened detail back into silhouettes. Electronic warfare teams kept recording signals, timing, behavior, because the morning had produced something valuable. Not just survival, pattern, how they approached, how they separated, which aircraft pressed hardest, which one held altitude, how they adjusted when the ship didn't react, how quickly confidence shifted once it became clear that Tripoli wasn't just a target in the water, but a system watching everything. For the pilots, it had been a show. For the ship, it had also been a collection. The lead aircraft widened further. Now the formation wasn't shaped around Tripoli anymore. It was shaped around leaving the moment behind. The forward pressure disappeared. The lateral pressure faded. The overhead position dissolved. The same 3 jets still occupied the sky, but they no longer controlled the center of it. Tripoli did. In the aviation spaces, readiness didn't drop. Equipment stayed in place. Personnel remained at stations. Nothing about that morning justified relaxing. The strait was still narrow. The coastline still close. The environment still compressed. There would be time later to review everything. For now, control remained the only acceptable posture. Range increasing through 20 miles. For the first time since 512, the geometry began giving something back. Space. Not much, but enough. Above the horizon, the fighters continued outward, disciplined, controlled. They didn't scatter. They didn't rush. They turned away in a way that suggested intention, as if the morning had always been planned. But intent was no longer theirs to define. Too much had already been seen. Too much recorded. Inside Tripoli, data was already being preserved. Timelines forming. Bearings, altitudes, low passes, silence on frequency, the final inbound run, the sharp break away from the bow. Every second mattered. Not because something had been fired, but because it hadn't. No streak across the sky, no defensive response triggered, no wreckage in the water, and still, everyone involved had come close enough to understand how little it would have taken to change everything. One more second on the same line, a slightly later break, a sharper reaction, a different decision in one cockpit. That's all it would have taken. But that's not what happened. What happened instead was quieter, colder, and in some ways, more revealing. 3 Iranian fighters pressed a U.S. warship inside one of the tightest waterways on Earth. USS Tripoli didn't panic. It didn't lose awareness. It didn't give control to speed or proximity. It tracked. It measured. It held. And when the moment came, the aircraft turned away first. By 5:30 local time, the immediate tension had passed. The fighters were opening distance. The transit continued. From the bridge, the sea looked almost unchanged. Same light, same narrow water, same steady movement. But no one aboard treated the morning as routine, because anyone who watched those jets descend, shape their approach, press the limits, and then pull away at the last moment, knew exactly what it had been. In Hormuz, a confrontation doesn't need to begin to reveal who controls the moment. That morning, the answer came without a single shot. USS Tripoli held its course, and the sky stepped back.